By here, I don't mean the global summit. I mean, what are we doing zooming around on our computers right now? Who would have thought that this would be how we'd be running our lives and our businesses? I could say there's probably somebody who was thinking about it, and he's actually our next speaker. Liviu Tudor hails from Romania, and he is the president of the European Property Federation, Europe's leading real estate organization representing owners, investors, and developers. He is also the founder of his own business, Genesis Property, which owns the largest number of Class A office buildings in Romania. His company's portfolio also includes the largest privately held campus in Romania, where they host and mentor 1,800 students. In response to the COVID-19 pandemic, Mr. Tudor developed the IMMUNEM Building Standard, which was the world's first open source global certification standard designed to ensure safer, healthier, pandemic-proof environments for people and organizations that are returning to their offices. Mr. Tudor, thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to learning about this amazing new initiative. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I will share a screen with you, if you allow me just 1 second. Can you see this?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. So over the last 30 years being in business, I was working to global companies, and I developed with them lots of offices, 1.6 million offices presently in Genesis Properties ownership. And even if we declare ourselves hospitality for global business, all the time we had in mind people. So what's happening when we encounter this huge problem of a pandemic? And immediately we think that whatever tenant you are, Hewlett-Packard, Societe Generale, Accenture, Siemens or Ericsson, that's a huge issue. And it was clear nobody was prepared. So we come up for a global problem with a global solution. And we call that the IMMUNEM Building Standard, which is boosting the resilience of our built environment. We set up a team immediately after March, April, when we saw the huge lockdown worldwide, with 20 people, architects, engineers, a medical team, science and technology. And with 1 million euro, we set up an R&D and an implementation of this, what we call new idea. What was the context? It's so clear we are the indoor generation, spending 90% of our time indoor. But COVID-19 changed the way we live, work, and interact. And the big issue for us was how companies around the world contemplate about bringing people back to office. We saw during the last month discussions about how we have to work from home. By the way, companies were having this kind of, all the global companies have people working from home from time to time. But in the end, the conclusion finally is offices will not disappear. We have to bring people back because the culture cannot be built outside a community, a physical community. So the challenge was, is a commercial building prepared for a pandemic or a similar threat? And we discovered that except hospitals and medical clinics, buildings are not prepared. So it's a need for a shift in demand to redesign, re-engineer and reorganize the facility management for our workplaces to be resilient to the future health changes. The solution, we call it Immune Building Standard, and it's the first open source building standard addressing the immunity of our built environment in the world. We search literature and we did not find it. This is why humble, I would say, that's a novelty. What is immune? Is inspired of technologies successfully applied in hospitals and in clean rooms, and which we develop a way to implement it into the commercial buildings. We come up with 100 plus measures, either for technical solution or recommended measures for facility management. First of all, it was about architectural engineering, technology and design on one hand, and on the other hand, it's about operational practices which which might be either perpetual or ready to activate. All of that, we place it under one concept, which is healthy by design. Buildings were focusing a lot on being green, on saving energy, but we discovered those days that health is more important, even when sometimes saving energy was so important, but sometimes measures that we developed require some energy, and our statement is health is #1 priority. What is healthy by design? We develop, we design, we engineer and maintain buildings having health in our mind. All of these property owners, developers, architects, designers should have this as a first priority, and not only for COVID-19, but for the time that will come, for the future. We develop an immune assessment scoring index with, as I said, more than 100 nominated measures. And we train an assessor, an assessment company, to evaluate and give score to each of the measures and to award labels either for 3, 4, or 5 stars. And in the end, we label the building with immune strong or immune powerful, or the best 5 stars, immune resilient. What were the objectives of this standard? To certify the resilience of the built environment, and so minimize the impact of the pandemic or other bacteriological or toxicological or future pandemics. It's mandatory to apply the set of requirements focusing on health. We introduce and educate preparedness for facility management teams in order to protect our occupants and visitors. All this is to ensure productive spaces for people. And I dare to say, if you agree, that finally offices will be even safer than our homes. What should be the benefits? If business leaders are running their people using HR tools, one of the most important key performance indicators. In the future, people, talents, will interview our buildings in order to build trust, and we have to apply health performance indicators. Of course, benefits will be for investors and developers in future proof of the built environment, and for all of us, this environment should focus on public health in order to be productive. This is why we opened the platform. It's an open source. and we are asking for collaborators all over the world. I'll speak later about this in 1 minute. So we ask collaborators to come up with new ideas. We are in the middle of the pandemic. We don't claim that we know everything. There are different companies in the world inventing different products and different rules. And we ask them to become contributors. Contributors will definitely have benefits in leadership, in productivity, in clarity, because we have a math-based appraisal with levels, in their perspectives, and of course, helping them to build and advise buildings and owners with health in mind under this umbrella, Healthy by Design. Their reputation should grow up, being pioneers, and communication, regional and global coverage, I'll show you a little bit later. We are working presently for the first immune building in the world with this tenant in one big building, 15,000 square meters. And we are happy to see how open they are to become the first immune building in the world. Just to see that when we start to talk with the world press, we receive quite an impressive media coverage, and it's practically all over the world as a quite received subject. What's next? We already are discussing with companies in US, in Chicago, in China, in Australia, in Singapore, in Dubai, and they want to become contributors, and more than that, there are buildings which want to become the first immune building in their countries. And working together with them will will make forward steps in order to have the best standard on an open source platform. And we think that's the future. You can find details on our site, Immune Building. We are working on a new version, which is much more developed. But I am curious if there are questions, and of course I encourage interested people into the subject to talk with my team and to develop together the standard.
Thank you, Mr. Tudor. Obviously, you appear to be quite the visionary, because this is something that seems to have been turned around quite quickly since the pandemic took hold of everyone's lives. You mentioned some of the media coverage that this has had, and I saw CNBC. There was actually an article in CNBC several weeks ago where they talked about buildings trying to improve the air quality, the water quality, the lighting, the acoustics, bringing in better filtration, air filtration into their buildings. Is there a guide as to how buildings that exist today can start to implement some of these changes to meet some of the standards that your certifications require?
It's exactly what we are doing right now with transforming an existing building into the first immune building in the world. And that's what we are discussing with several companies all over the world, to transform offices into what we call immune buildings. Of course, the standard will apply to whatever commercial building, to apartments, to schools, to factories. But for that, we open discussions with specialized designers. 80% of the work, I think, it's already done for offices. It's just to adapt the standard to specific commercial buildings. we are doing that. We are preparing manuals and movies. The standard will be online because that's the requirement of today and the future. And we receive an amazing reply to launching this standard for existing buildings. Of course, we'll apply for new buildings, and this will be a separate part of the standard.
And there seems to be a lot of talk about improving air filtration, improving the quality of the water. Those seem to be things that can be manipulated through mechanical systems, better mechanical systems. There's another concept, I think they call it biophilic concepts, where they're incorporating like green walls or green materials, materials like wood into new structures in order to bring in more of the natural elements around us to improve air quality. Is that something that your standard looks at as well?
Absolutely. Green will not disappear. As you know, in Europe, the Green Deal was just reinforced in January this year. So Europe is leading towards that, and our organization, European Property Federation, is very much involved into that. Green is our natural habit. We have to be green. We have to live with the nature outside and inside our buildings. And you'll see there are measures talking about that, and we are preparing showcase of our standard in a new concept where sustainability and green are the main vectors of the future developments in offices.
Great. And do you find that most of the buildings that you're working with, are they newer buildings right now, or are new developments, or are we also going into some of the older structures and redeveloping them and reconverting them into something that's safer and healthier? What's the dominant focus right now of this standard? Like, where is it being applied right now?
Right now, we are discussing with owners having existing buildings with tenants, because the main goal is to show to our tenants as owners and to the employers, to the employees of our tenants, that we are taking serious measures in order to make offices very safe places. And we have very specific measures that we did not find it anywhere else except this standard, which is, for example, developing an immune steward, which will take care of the building from this perspective of a pandemic or a similar threat. The most important thing today is existing buildings to become immune. And then, of course, future buildings will have to take and to incorporate this standard. If you want, the same way you develop a fire safety measure, and it is by law, when you develop and design a building to incorporate measures, you spend money, you put those measures there, and then you pray never to use it, because this is firefighting measures. The same way we have to implement measures for immunity of the building, and hopefully we'll never use it. But in case that a new pandemic or a similar threat will be enforced, then a special trained officer will know exactly what button to push. The building will have all kinds of measures already implemented and facility management rules, and everybody will know because of the label of the building that the building is prepared. Will never encounter an image like in March this year, when nobody was prepared for such a huge event, global event.
Mr. Tudor, thank you so much. This is something that's very new to us, so it's probably the first time we're hearing it here, at least within our circles as realtors. And I'm hoping that maybe in the future, in the near future, we can reconnect or maybe if you could share with us some information where we can go to learn more about your immune standard. And clearly, the real estate industry can help people live and work in a safer, healthier, and better way. And this step forward that you've taken us is helping us get there. So thank you very much.
I thank you.
Thank you.
All the best.
Thank you. So on the subject of creating better living environments, I'm excited to introduce you to Charles Montgomery. Our next speaker. Charles is an award-winning author, urbanist, and leader of a consulting group that actually helps build happiness into our cities. Charles is the